Alright, hi there YouTube, it's me, Morphsuit America, and in this video I'll be talking about the basic concepts and rules of affixing. These are just basic stuff. It's nothing too complicated, these are facts, compared to some other things that I'm going to talk about in their own separate videos, like how to stack abilities, how to deal with upslotting, what's the percentages to upslotting, etc, etc. But this video just gives you a rundown of the basic rules and functions of how to do affixing, where to go, and etc, etc. If you haven't seen my old playlist talking about fixing, you should check that out if you really want to get right into it and get started with it. I am remaking a bunch of old videos into newer and better quality slash versions of those videos, so if you want to check out the video where I talk about what is affixing and why you should do it, you can check that out in the description below. And also know that this is a Japanese PSO2. It does have English translations if you play it on the PC and laptop. And I made a video talking about how to download it as well. And there's a bunch of other videos in the description below. But, god damn it, why is people interrupting me? Let's get started with this video after I cut away. Alright, so we're back, and as you can see in the background, I actually have Monica instead of Dudu. Understand that Monica will pop up every time you go to an even block, Dudu will pop up if you go to an odd block. You can control who actually does your fixes or grinds. Now, to get to those two anyways, let's say you're in the gate area, all you need to do is go down to the elevator, and they're right there. Now, if you take the middle one, you're going to be up there, but you can jump down. Honestly, that's kind of a health hazard, but there's no such thing as fall damage over here in PSO2, so you don't need to worry about it. Alright, so this is a different recording from the previous recordings I have, and I only use that first half so I can, or first bit, so I can actually get this video started. So understand that this video is going to be in two parts. One of them is going to focus about giving you guys the facts and the things that you should think about. The other half's gonna back up whatever the fuck I said in the first half. So, keep that in mind. There's gonna be time skips in the description below if you want to go to the second half. But, let's go to the basics right now. When it comes to affixing, you get to speak to Dudu or Monica and you get to select the second option. Now, there's more to it, but the second option is what you get to go for. I'm going to demonstrate my point when it comes to this feature right here, locking items, because this can be to your advantage. It depends on how you go about it. So let's say I have a very important fodder piece that I don't really want to mess with or accidentally click on. What I can do is check mark this and I won't see it. Now, the reason why I say you might accidentally use it is because even if it's locked, you can still select it if you use this as your base component or the base material that everything else is going to go onto. So, you can see another box that pops up says, you selected an item that's locked, are you sure you wish to continue? And if I hit yes, then I can actually use it. However, if I try to do this with something else and try to click on that locked item, you can see that you cannot use this as materials because it's locked. So keep that in mind if you plan to affix. There's moments where you might want to use that little component to your advantage so you don't accidentally use something that's really, really important even though you locked it. So, here's the thing. When it comes to affixing in general, this is the basic stuff. Now, there's a lot more to it, but I'll mention those in their own separate videos. But the first big rule, though, is that units can only be affixed with units, weapons can only be affixed with weapons. If I try to select this 14-star weapon, for example, that's at a 3 slot, even if I have units that are at a 3 slot in my inventory, you cannot select them. You can only select the units, and then vice versa. That's the first rule, and it's pretty easy. Second rule is that you can only affix a weapon that has the same amount of abilities or higher with whatever base component you have. So if I select this 14-star that's at a 3 slot, for example, and if you don't know how to read your weapons and units, I made a video talking about that a couple months ago, or actually it's like months ago, so check out that video before you actually get into affixing. But yeah, this number right here will pretty much state what or how many abilities you have. So this 14-star has 3 slots, so I can choose from 3 slot and above. However, if I decide to select this weapon that has a 5 slot, you can only see that I can only select these two compared to that giant list that I had for that 3 slot one. And the same with the units. If I choose a 4 slot, 4 slot are higher, and then for the 2 slot, 2 slot are higher. The third rule is pay attention to the affix cost. The lower the rarity, the better, or the cheaper it is. Now, is this a good or bad thing? That depends on you and how you approach it and what you're doing specifically. But if I take this 3-star weapon, for example, and if I only use 2, now this is actually very important to use 2, and I'll go more into why in the second half. But if I only use 2, you can see that it's only at 10,000. But if I go to if I select all 5 materials, for example, you can see that it went from that 10,000 to 184,000, which isn't too bad still, don't get me wrong. However, if you decide to, let's say, affix a 14-star, and you use up all of that material slot. Now, for 2 of them, it's only 63,000. However, that price increases when you select more material items. As you can see, that 63,000 went to 383,000. And then the 4th one goes to 500, roughly around 500,000 Meseta. And then the last one goes to 1,000,000. So do be cautious and do be aware of the cost for it. Now, there is no way around it if you need to use all 5 of those material slots so you can get your final fixes or the ideal fixes you want. But if you're making fodder, you want to try to make it as cheap as possible. And then the last rule. Now, once again, I know there's more to it than whatever I'm stating in this video. It's just that these are kind of like the basic general things you should do, period. Like, you should ignore this. The other things I'll go more into details about would be like the upslot penalty, stacking abilities so you can get the highest percentage, and etc, etc. But this is just the basic. When it comes to affixing, you want to select 2 material items. And the reason being is because if you plan to upslot, then there's gonna be a slight difference in percentages. Now, if I were to, let's say, use this 14-star that has a 3-slot on it, if I only use, well, to demonstrate my point, I'm gonna use 2. Because this is a standard. You can see that right now I'm using junk abilities and they're all at 100%. But if I choose the 4th one to that extra slot, you can see that the percentage went down. Now, it's supposed to be at 70%. But the reason why it's at 15% right now is because of the fact that there's a 15% affix boost going on. And if you don't know that, then you should check that little notice video that I have in the description, or it might pop up on the screen right now. You definitely want to take advantage of it. Now, it is during a certain time limit or a certain date, so if you watch this at a later date, then you might have missed it. Alright, so here's a little visual word format demonstration of what I'm trying to get at. So it's supposed to be at 70%. Now, let me turn that to a 0 before I even get started. What you want to do is, well, the reason why it says junk is because it's whatever tier 1 ability it is. Now, most tier 1s are at 100%. There are some exceptions like ability 1 and some status ailment ones, but most abilities that have grade 1 are at 100%. But you can see that there's 3 of them, right? When I try to upslot it, you can see that that percentage change. Now, if I change the campaign boost up here, pretty much is the fixed boost percentage. If I change that to 15, it's 85%, and what you see on the screen right now is pretty much 85%. So, yeah. Here's the problem though, if you don't use 2. And this is supposed to be my later point, but I'm demonstrating it now because it's a visual thing you have to kind of be aware of. Now, I'm gonna have to select some weird stuff over here. But pay attention to the ones that are 100%. So when I hit ability 3, or when I increase it to a 4 slot, it's not entirely at 85%. Now, obviously it's still up in the 80s, there is still a chance for it to fail, but at the same time, you try to want to get the maximum percentage without actually overdoing it. So, just using 2 will give you the max passive percentage boost, excuse me, when it comes to upsliding. Now, there are other ways to increase this percentage a bit more, but I'll save that in a later video. And I guess the last point that I might mention is the fact that you definitely want to try to use ability success rate boosters when you try to affix, and if you can get them. Now, I understand that depending on where you're at, and depending on how far you've come, and depending on how many Excubes you have, this might not be an option for you, or might be an option for you, but this is something to consider, because since this is talking about the basics, these ability success rate boosters will help you out for sure if you try to affix. And if you don't know how to get Excuse and Photon Spheres, I made a video in the past talking about it, so check that out in the description as well, or you might see a little annotation or something pop up on the screen right now. But yeah, here they are, the one that's at 30% and 40%. And how you use them is pretty much you go over here, back to doo-doo, and when you actually affix something and get your final fixes you want to toy around with, or you want to have, you want to do something like this, for example. And when you begin to do that, you'll see like support items. The first option will allow you to use those selectors. So if you are trying to finalize something, or if you are just in need of trying to increase that percentage, then don't be afraid to actually use that option. So pretty much that's it when it comes to the basics. And once again, I know I haven't covered every important thing, but some of these things will have to have their own video because it's just going to be a lot longer, especially when it comes to the upslot negative or the upslot penalty for trying to get from like a low grade slot to a high grade slot, or 1 slot to a 2 slot, or 7 slot to an 8 slot. They are different percentages, and there are different kind of ways to approach it. But thank you guys for watching this first half. Once again, this is just pretty much explaining the basic factual stuff. Now, if you want to see the reasons behind why I talked about these things, then wait a couple more seconds / minutes, because that's the second half of this video. But if you just came here to just know that basic stuff so you can get started into the next video, or just so you can get started on affixing, then thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Alright, so if you're here for the second half, then I'm going to emphasize on a few little snippets, especially with certain rules that I stated. Now, the first 2 rules are pretty straightforward, but the second rule that I mentioned, talking about how whatever weapon or unit you're fixing with and whatever number of abilities it has, it can only work with the same amount of abilities or higher. You can actually use this to your advantage when it comes to the market. Now, before I get started about why you can use this to your advantage, let me also talk about the other point, which is the affix cost. You want to pay attention to that, because if you plan to use this to your advantage, especially when it comes to selling stuff, you want to use as little resources as you can. You want to spend as less as you can so you can earn an overall profit off of it, or you can get the maximum amount of profit off of it. So let's say, for example, bringing this up, you need to get, let's say you want to make a Rev Catalyst. Now, the reason why I bring up these catalysts is because they'll definitely sell, and there's a reason to it, which I'll make in its own separate video. But if you check the Rev Catalyst at a 3 slot, oh wow, someone undercut it, which I kind of predicted. They were at 2,730,000 Meseta, but because of this person, they decided to undercut them, so they took it down to 2,415,000 Meseta. Pretty much, it's still a decent amount, even for a 3 slot. The problem is making that catalyst. However, when it comes to gambling, when it comes to affixing, especially when it comes to selling it and getting a profit off of it, you are technically gambling. In a sense, just because when it comes to like some of these good abilities you need to sell and getting people to actually buy them, you will have to gamble. Now, there are moments where you can actually manipulate the percentages, so you don't really need to worry about it going away or risking it, but most of the time when it comes to affixing for money, you're going to be gambling. But yeah, now to make a Rev Catalyst, you will need to have the 5 Fouls Catalyst, and if you know how to make an Astro Soul, pretty much it's the same with the Mana Rev. Or pretty much it's the same when it comes to making this Rev Catalyst. You need Persona Res, Elder Res, Loser Res, double res, and then however you pronounce it. It's pretty much a princess rev. It's just that it's the other spelling for it. But yeah, let's say you want to buy a couple fodder pieces for Apparenza, or however you pronounce this stupid word right here, and you want to try to get it at a 3 slot. As you can see, at a 3 slot, it's at 126,000 instead of, which isn't too bad. However, you might want to consider checking the higher slots as well, because it could be cheaper. Now, is it going to be cheaper by a whole lot? No, not really. As you can see, this one is only off by like maybe 20,000, so roughly around 100,000 instead of you're spending. But the higher you go, the cheaper it may be. Now, apparently it's not cheaper at 5 slots, so the 4 slot might be an option if you buy too much materials at the 3 slot margin, and you actually need to get more materials, but you don't want to spend like 200,000 Meseta. You could spend like 100,000 Meseta going for the 4 slot materials instead. Now, just be aware that... What was I gonna say? That interrupted me. Just be aware that it's not going to be the same for every ability. Some of them might actually have an increase to them, like that Mana Rev, or Rev Catalyst, for example. If you really want to buy these things for yourself, understand that at 3 slot, it is at, what, 2,415 something thousand Meseta. Now, it got undercut again. I'm just shaking my head. Always undercut it. But yeah, as you can see, even at a 4 slot, it's actually at that price. 5 slots should be a bit more expensive. Yeah, there it is. So it's 3,150,000 Meseta. So if you're trying to go for a 5 slot, for example, then you do have to deal with that. If you were going for a 3 slot and you're trying to find a cheaper price, you're not going to get it any cheaper. Maybe at the 4 slot, because this guy decided to undercut. But it's not too bad. But yeah, the thing is, the next point I'll emphasize on now would be the third rule that I mentioned, the affix cost. The reason why I want to be aware of this is because you might be careless. Not saying you are careless. You might be careless, or you might want to avoid doing this sort of situation. Let's say that you're not paying attention and you decide to actually, try to make a Rev Catalyst yourself. You have like double res on this one, and then you select pieces that have the other components to it. And honestly, these pieces don't have it, but this is for demonstration purposes. And you can see that the affix cost is at 393,600 Meseta. This isn't too bad, but if you were to use up all 5 slots, for example, it does eat up a decent amount of money. And if you really don't care, as long as you get like a decent profit off of your fixes, then you could just affix it as it is. But you do need to keep in mind that when it comes to the market, you also have to deal with undercutters. And depending on how low they start selling stuff, and depending on how fast you want your stuff to be sold, then you might be sort of playing along with their little game, and you might be selling something that could have earned you a lot more profit, depending on if you were patient about it or if you didn't play their game. So, you know how the price was for the 3 slot Rev Catalyst? It was at what? It was at 2,415,000 Meseta. Then it went down to maybe like another 200,000 Meseta. If someone kept on undercutting, that's gonna actually deteriorate the true value or the maximum sort of percentage you could try to aim for. So even if you spent like, let's say, this much and you really don't care about it, overall in the end you might actually lose a lot more, or you wouldn't be able to gain the maximum amount of percentage because of those undercutters. So your best bet is to actually use something of a low rarity. I don't care if the ability is already on it, I don't care if it doesn't have it on it. You may want to use this as your base fodder unit just so you can save on Meseta cost. Because if I use a 2 slot, for example, and use up all 5 of these material slots, you can see that it's only at 92,160 Meseta, which isn't a lot. And even if they decide to undercut, I'm not losing as much because this is how cheap I made it. I can even make it for dirt cheap, like really cheap. If you want to know how cheap I could make it, this is how cheap I can make it. 6,400,000 Meseta. Yep. I can gamble, excuse me, for a Rev Catalyst for this much. And then I'll gain a profit no matter how bad they undercut it. However, it's not the maximum amount of it, and if I'm only making 3 slots, it's not going to be like an oh my god sort of thing, but at the very least, I'm getting something out of it. So yeah, that's why you want to pay attention to the rarity cost, especially if you decide to sell fodder on the market. You want to spend less so you can earn a lot more out of it. So pretty much buy low, sell high. But that should be it for this video. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, put it down in the comments below. I'll answer them to the best of my degree. Know that this isn't everything when it comes to affixing. There are so many snippets and shortcuts now because of all these easy mechanics that I've been noticing, and I'm just laughing at how I can actually abuse them. Now, if you're wondering how I could abuse them, you'll see them in due time. But that's it for this video. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.